So today is going to be a lot of panels, like in the afternoon, and they're sort of set up in a specific way. The first one is we call Prepared to Practice. So this is a group of alumni that practice, and we've tried to find folks that practice in different practice areas: public, private, trial, transactional, that kind of stuff, to talk a little bit about sort of their law school careers, their legal careers. I think a lot of times, I remember when I was starting law school, you don't necessarily see the path before you. And the days of somebody sort of working for one firm for 50 years and retiring with the gold watch really don't exist in a lot of places. And you'll find your career is going to sort of do this, right? And so we try to bring examples of that. I also have a microphone over here, so the older folks in the room probably remember Maury Povich and Donahue, and like I'm going to walk around like Sally Jesse Raphael. All those references are lost on your children because there's no shows like that on TV anymore in the middle of the day. But this is going to be, like I said, interactive. After we go through and with the introductions, feel free to ask any questions you want. I think you found one of the nice things about lawyers in this situation is that we love to talk. And we love to talk about ourselves and our lives and that kind of thing, so that's perfect for this. So I want you to ask them all sorts of questions and things. So the way we do this, the way I usually do this, is I have you guys introduce yourselves, and I'm going to give you sort of a few prompts. So Traci, you draw the short straw because you're going to go first, because you're going to have plenty of time to think about your answer. But so a little, brief bio, so your name, where you work, law school and that kind of stuff, where you went to school. And then one thing that surprised you about the practice of law that maybe you didn't think about when you were a law student. So those are your things. So Traci, kick it off. Oh, hit the little buttons. Hit all the buttons. Right in front of you in your mic.
Is that working? Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Traci Siebenlist. I'm a class of 2009 graduate here from Tech. I work at Crenshaw, Dupree, and Milam here in Lubbock, Texas. I clerked for the bankruptcy court straight out of law school and then joined the firm right after that. And my practice area consists of about half transactional work and about half governmental entity defense work, meaning employment matters and civil rights cases. So those are pretty fun. As for the one thing that surprised me, I think that what can get lost in law school is the importance of relationships with your peers, and that really translates into the practice of law. I can't tell you how much more enjoyable work is when you have somebody that you know and trust on the other side, whether that's somebody you went to law school or somebody you meet in the practice. So maintaining relationships with your peers, starting off in law school and then through the practice of law, is something that is invaluable, and I would urge you to consider and take that with you.
My name is Dwight McDonald. I graduated from Texas Tech School of Law in 1993, and for 21 years, I came to law school with the intent of working for myself and had the good fortune to be able to do so for 21 years and started working at the law school 2 months ago, so I'm back. The one thing that surprised me about the practice of law as opposed to law school was just how little in 1993 law school actually prepared you to practice law. We had a lot of classes, and at the time, and even today I still believe, Texas Tech is the best place to go to law school if you actually intend to practice law, because we, at that time in 1993, did a much better job of preparing students to practice law. And with our clinical programs and externships, we still do a better job than everyone else, having you actually ready to practice law when you leave.
My name's Lee Franks, and I am a partner in firm with a lady named Laura Beth Pleasant, who graduated a year ahead of me. I was your traditional, non-traditional student. I graduated in 2008, so I went to law school with a wife, 3 kids, and a mortgage. So if I can do it, any one of you can. My practice involves primarily elder law, which is a lot of estate planning and things like that, but it's just with a spin for older folks. And it's not just because I'm bald and old. There's a series of events that led me to be there. I'm happy to be there. I think I'm good at what I do, and I enjoy what I do, which kind of leads me to the part that's a little bit, it's probably the most, I don't know if it's surprising, but I think that some things when you get into practice, they suddenly come home to you. And in my case, realizing that as an attorney sitting there, and especially if you happen to be bald and a little older, the clients that I work with tend to believe everything that you say. They put a tremendous amount of faith in your knowledge and ability to work and solve their problem or to help them do what they need to do. I do a lot of Medicaid work. I work with a lot of very elderly people. I work with their children. And that really places a burden on you. Of course, there's a professional burden to do as good as you can. But whenever you wake up in the middle of the night with in a cold sweat thinking, my God, did I forget to do that? Because it might cost my client thousands of dollars, and my little client can't afford that. It brings home to you just how important that relationship is and what that relationship implies. I am hurt deeply if I even feel like I haven't done what I needed to do for my client. So I think that really came home to me, even though I might have come to that conclusion in kind of an intellectual way. There's nothing like having them sit there and lean on what you're having to say.
My name's Kristi Ward. I'm a 2005 graduate, and I'm the Associate General Counsel for UMC Health System here in Lubbock, which consists of a Level 1 trauma center, a physician group, and an insurance network. So I'm an in-house lawyer, and I do a lot of everything related to health law, which is a very broad category. I think the one thing that I found surprising upon graduation is just the sole breadth of all of your different options as a lawyer. There are so many practice areas that as a law student, I really did not have an idea existed. Just within my broad category of health law, you have attorneys who are highly super specialized in specific categories and can fashion an entire career over one component just underneath that broad umbrella. And as a student, in looking at, well, what do I want to do career-wise, I don't think I had this idea that there were just so many options available to you as an attorney.
Thank you, Kristi. All right, it's y'all's turn. Do you have any questions about anything at all? So who's going to be the first person? Good job. There you go.
What helped y'all decide which career path to go into?
Good job. Anybody?
I didn't really hear.
Well, how did you decide what career path to follow? Is that kind of, like either to decide to become a lawyer or to practice the areas of law that you practice?
Now, I'll talk. If you don't stop me, I'll talk all you want me to.
Oh, I'll stop you, and
Mine
you can
is-
believe what I say because I'm bald.
Mine's not particularly traditional because I came to it late. Frankly, I'd been a school teacher, and before that I was an engineer. And as a school teacher, I loved that. I didn't care much for administrators. Sorry, Dean Darby. But so eventually I got it. My biggest problem was we had medical bills, and I had a hip that needed to be replaced at the time, and I couldn't see making the payment, and so I had to look for something I thought would be, at least in the future, more remunerative. And so I, after a few stutter steps, decided on law because I thought it was mostly merit-based. And it largely is, but as a non-traditional student, you find out right quick that large, big firms really are kind of interested in those young drones that they can squeeze all the life out of to pay for their retirement. I was too old to fit that model, really, and so it turned out a guy had been, I was on a church retreat, and the guy I didn't remember him, so I'm so sorry, but he remembered me, and he ended up hiring me. He was an attorney, and he was going into elder law. I had originally going to do patent law, and then I decided I didn't know enough about computer programs, and then I was going to do water law, and that was just moving too freaking slow. And then he happened to be doing elder law, and I'm kind of like a little bit like a flower. I'm going to bloom where I'm planted, and if I was going to do elder law, by God, I was going to be a good one. And so that's how I ended up going into law, and how I ended up where I am at the moment.
Kristi, how'd you end up at UMC? And actually move the mic a little closer to you.
Well, I sort of had an odd path as well. I came into law school wanting to do death penalty work, and I left law school interested in health law. Somewhat related.
You just wanted to start earlier with keeping them alive, right? I assume keeping them alive or the other side. I don't.
Say that again?
Keeping them alive or on the other side?
Oh, you know,
healthy enough no.
keeping them alive. I had a professor while I was at law school, Professor Jennifer Bard, who at that time was new to the Texas Tech Law School and had a large, vast experience related to health law, and I took several of her classes and became very interested in that area. Upon graduation, I went to work for Advocacy Incorporated, which is now Disability Rights of Texas. So all of my clients were disabled in some capacity, and I did litigation covering a 64-county area. Still somewhat health law related because of the client base and then also some of the issues that we handled on behalf of those clients. And at the time, to sort of, I guess, fill the gap of the death penalty interest, I did research and writing for the Texas Criminal Defense Lawyers Association. And through that, met an attorney who happened to be married to the general counsel of UMC Health System and ended up at UMC Health System doing health law and have not looked back since then. I absolutely love it. I thought I would miss litigation, but I don't. I like being in-house, and it's been a great, in my view, career and the right path for me, but it did take me a while to figure out that that's where I needed to be.
So you didn't have it all figured out, in other words, like right away. Oh, okay, that's refreshing. Kristi,
Yeah, I'll
how about
jump in.
Traci?
Mine is also a little bit of a different story. Through law school, I knew I did not want to do family law and I did not want to do criminal law, and that was about it. After law school, I was very interested in a clerkship program and pursued that route, but the driving force and where I ended up was a deal that I made with my, at that time, fiance, soon-to-be future husband, that whoever got a job first got the market, so to speak, and then the other would just find a job there. And actually, I lost that. My husband won that bet and got a job here in Lubbock, and it just kind of worked out for me that I did as well, but just a little bit of a unusual path.
And I grew up in a small town about 80 miles from here, was a teacher and a coach before I didn't know any lawyers growing up, had no inclination to become a lawyer. But after 2 years of coaching, I wanted to change schools. I called my high school football coach, who was in law school, and he convinced me to go to law school. And so I ended up coming here with the intent of working for myself. They actually slipped up and gave me a scholarship, and then they slipped up again and allowed me to graduate. And so I went out with the intent of practicing criminal law and family law. And about 5 years worth of family law was about enough for me. And so for the last 16 years, my partner and I primarily did criminal defense work. And then I had an opportunity to come back and work at the law school in the clinical program in the criminal and family law clinic. So that's how I ended up in law school. And I'm still mad at my high school football coach because my intent was to go back and coach when I got out of law school or practiced for a few years and went back. He actually did go back and coach and has won a state championship, and I kind of chastised him for getting me in this and then leaving me. So
Got the mental note for a sitcom. Coached lawyers, like that's, I just picture you guys in whistles and little short shorts in court, you know, like blowing the whistle and stuff. Don't steal that idea, it's on tape that I had it first.
Can you hear me? Okay. Did law school well-round prepare you for any area of practice, or did you like intend to specialize while in law school and then practice outside of it?
I'll take this one. I think Lee said it best earlier in that, I think it was you, that law school will never fully prepare you for the practice of law, but what you do in law school is largely up to you. You have your core curriculum, which if you don't know what that is, somebody will tell you at some point, but then beyond that, you have an abundance of choices that can lead you to a specialty or give you experience in a wide variety of subjects. So I think that's up to you. I myself was very interested in the employment law aspect when I was in law school, and I took advantage of the employment law classes that were offered. But you know, if there's taxes and criminal stuff and all the advocacy programs, you can make of it what you want to. If you want to experience everything, you certainly can.
I would agree. I mean, I think, you know, I'm the old guy here. I graduated in '93. We didn't have these advocacy programs. We certainly didn't have clinical programs. There were one, maybe two journals when I graduated. Now there are many journals. So whatever interests you, the time to find out is while you're in law school. you have an opportunity to be on journals, you have an opportunity to be in clinical programs. I think we have 7 clinical programs that you can participate in. You have an opportunity to do externships. So you come in thinking you might have an idea of what you want to do, but you get involved in it, it may not be what you think it is, but there are other opportunities for you. So I wouldn't be married to an idea of what I want to do. Obviously, you want to take some courses or head in that direction, but if you find out that's not what you want to do, you can certainly change and go a different direction. You're not married to anything. That would be my suggestion to you.
I like Dwight's answer a great deal. That's exactly right. You can, and Traci as well, you can do whatever you want. If I had come into school prepared only to be a litigator with a large firm, I'd still be unemployed right now. Because that just wasn't realistic, and I had no idea. But it wasn't until I got here that I learned anything about that whole thing. And like Kristi said, had no idea the broadness of the practice of law. Being open-minded and taking the opportunities that you have, don't foreclose any possibility. If someone said I was going to be taking care of old people whenever I graduated, I'd have thought they were nuts, because that just was not in the realm of my experience. But it turned out to be an area of need, and the first time you're able to solve some little couple's, to them, all-encompassing problem, ladies and gentlemen, that's rush. Whenever someone looks at you after you've done something that looks to them like magic, I tell you what, I don't care what you're doing, you're going to find another way to do that. So keep your mind open to those things and explore, because like Dwight said, I would love to read more. I'd love to explore more, and I'm a natural reader. I read 2-3 hours a day anyway. But I don't have more time to look at different areas of law anymore. But in law school, I looked at a lot and had the opportunity. So I just threw myself into whatever I was doing and be willing to be open.
There's an old saying that someone smarter than I said before, which is that you come to law school, and when you're asked a question, your response is, I don't know. You graduate from law school, and when you're asked a question, you can say with great authority, it depends. And I think that's accurate. Obviously, in law school, you have knowledge, you learn about various topics, but I think what you gain from law school is a skill set. And I think it's the skill set that becomes very important upon graduation. It's not so much knowing the answer, but how to find the answer. Because you'll find that when you graduate, even when you've been practicing 5 or 10 years, you will get asked a question that you do not know the answer to. But as long as you know how to go about finding that answer based on skills that you have been taught, then you're able to appropriately represent your client. And I think that's one of the benefits that I found at Texas Tech. I participated, as other members of the panel did as well, in the clinics and in the externship program. And I feel like those taught me those skills so that when I graduated, I may not have known all the answers, but I knew how to practice. I knew how to be a lawyer. And I think that's one of the benefits that you will find in participating in Texas Tech and the various different clinic opportunities that they have and externship opportunities
So
as well.
if you could go back to law school and do one thing differently, what would you do differently?
I wouldn't do anything different. I worked my butt off. I read before every class. I never walked into a class unprepared because I liked reading. I liked learning. It actually didn't take away that much time from my family because I decided early on that it was going to be school and family. It was not going to be moot court. There was not going to be competitions. There was not going to be a journal. In fact, I began to apply for the law review, and I had just opened the packet, and my oldest kid, he might have been 8 at the time, came and said, "Dad, would you help me build this birdhouse?" I closed the book. That was the last time I ever thought about doing anything extracurricular because that was what I focused on. So I loved it. My biggest problem was I was intimidated by all these smart people that I was walking into class with. I didn't know how I'd measure up, and they were all young and smart and energetic, but I ended up loving it. I loved being around those folks. I loved being around smart people, even if I didn't like them. I loved being around them. I liked being around, they were entertaining to me. I learned something from them. I wouldn't change anything, even though, like I said, I had 2 careers before I got there and had 2 or 3 different ideas about what I was going to do. I wouldn't change any of it because if I did, then I might not be where I am, and I like where I am.
Well, I probably would have applied myself a little more. I worked really hard my first year, did really well, and then I just kind of said, you know what, I proved I can do this. I don't want to work for anybody else. I'm here to work for me, so I don't have to impress anybody else. And I just, unlike Lee, I put a lot of other things in front of school, and I would get to it when I would get to it. So I probably would have applied myself more, or at least for a longer period of time. But had a goal of working for myself, and so, like I said, I was fortunate enough to do that for 21 years, and I'm satisfied with that, satisfied with where I'm at, and but I would have applied myself more.
I think I would have told myself that it was okay if at various points I hated law school. That did not mean that I would hate being a lawyer, because there are other times, or at least there were for me, maybe not for the dean. I think she loved law school. But at least for me, there were those moments where you kind of question, did I make the right career choice? Am I in the right place? Is this really what I want to do? And I think if I had to go back, those thoughts are okay. That doesn't mean that you're not going to be a great lawyer or that you're not going to love being a lawyer, because I absolutely love being a lawyer. But some of that is just normal things that come along, I think, with law school, regardless of where you end up attending law school.
I was convinced in law school that I did not want to do any litigation work, and so I chose not to participate in any Board of Barristers competitions at all. I didn't do anything. I did participate in the journal, but I think I would have, I do wish I would have done at least 1 or 2 mock trials or moot court programs, even though, at this point in my career, I'm not doing a significant amount of litigation. I am doing litigation, and I would have liked to have been able to learn that in law school when it's okay to mess up, as opposed to when it, cost money to mess up. So that's my comment.
And I want to follow up something that I was thinking when Dwight was talking. Kristi and Traci, did you guys go straight through from undergrad to law school?
I did, yes.
Yes, I did as well.
Okay. So for Dwight and Lee, how was that transition getting back into the sort of study, the classroom thing? Was that, because we do have a large number of students that have been out, at least 1, 2, 3 years. Was that an adjustment? Did you find you were more focused, or was it tougher? Can you talk about that?
Well, I'll tell you, I shouldn't be saying this, but I didn't study a lot when I was in undergrad. And so it was better for me to have gone out and worked a couple of years and then came back, because I can assure you that had I gone straight from undergrad to law school, I probably would not be sitting here today. School was just fun, and I always did well, so I figured, hey, I don't need to do anything else. And so it was beneficial to me to be able to go out, work a couple of years, kind of get myself settled, and then come back. And I had several people in my class. I was 25 when I started law school, and we had several people in our class that were mid-40s. We actually had one gentleman who was 70 years old who had retired twice and then decided he was going to go to law school, and actually practiced for about 5 years after he graduated. So, and I always, when I was in undergrad, I was always mad at those non-traditional students, because they seemed to be so much more prepared than I was, and it's probably because they weren't out doing the things I was doing the night before, the day before, or whatever. And then I was happy to become one of those non-traditional students.
I indicated earlier that law was about my 3rd career, and so I've had a problem staying out of school just in general. So it wasn't much of a transition, other than the just like I said, I was very anxious about the people in my classes. They just all seemed so much smarter than I was, and I just didn't know if I would be able to hold up. And so that was my primary concern. But I'd been back to school a couple of times since I'd left. I got an engineering degree in '87, and then had gone back because I didn't know anything about money, and graduated from UT in '94. And so I just hadn't stayed away from school all that long. And being a school teacher, kind of had all the skills just right there at hand when I got ready. The thing, to me, it's a blessing to spend. Not that a lot of folks go directly through, but if anyone asks me, I always say, take a few years off, take 5 years off, take something. just because the experience means something. For me, law school was a series of light bulbs going off. That's why we do things that way. You know, because I'd been out in the world, I'd signed a lease, I'd bought a house, I had done things and experienced things, and it made sense, because really law is just kind of the codified method of getting along. The common law is just how very smart people got together and solved a problem and made a rule for everybody. So really, all it is a kind of a structure that kind of puts down on paper or puts into books, kind of how we've decided to get along as a culture for the last several thousand years or a few thousand years. So to me, I think I enjoyed more, just the classroom time and just learning, because to me it meant a little bit more. When I did family law, I had adopted a kid. My oldest kid, I got mom and the kid in a package deal, and I ended up adopting him. I understood that process a little bit better because I'd been through it. And so the ability, learning sometimes is, you learn better when you have something to hang it to. You have some kind of structure. And for me, those years that I spent doing other things made law school a lot more, to me, productive and more meaningful. I just didn't have much trouble staying awake in class, which now I have a great deal of difficulty staying awake in class.
What's the biggest, or I guess most influential experience or lesson that you've learned from law school that's stuck with you or helped you the most in your career?
The thing that I learned, I was scared to death when I came to law school, because that was for smart folks. That wasn't for me. I was a dang coach. That's what I did. So what I figured out was that we're a nation of people in the middle, and law school's no different. You got about 10% of the people that are just going to be way smarter than everybody else, or at least way smarter than me. You got about 10% of the people that not so much, and you got about 80% of people that are all right there in the middle. And it's a matter of who works the hardest in that 80%. I've always been a hard worker when I needed to be. And so once I figured that out, that's why I said I would have applied myself more. I really worked hard my first year, did well, and then I kind of realized, I can do this. But I don't have any reason to knock myself out now. I just need to get through this and get to my ultimate goal, which is to work for me. And so I just kind of said, all right, I've proved that. But that's the thing that I have carried with me, was that 80%, it's how hard you work. That's the difference.
I'll comment on, I participated in the low-income tax clinic when I was a 3L here, and that puts you in circumstances where you help local members of the community with basically IRS issues. And that, for me, was really when law school became real. It's all books and papers up until that point. But when you have a person in front of you who really is in trouble, whether or not it's, substantial or not, it's substantial to them, criminal, civil, whatever it is. And it really makes it real at that point that you are able to help someone in whatever it is that they're facing. And that made it a lot more important for me than just tests and papers, because really what you're learning does impact people, even if it doesn't while you're in law school, if you don't, participate in the clinics. That's something that you will take forward with you to help people in whatever practice area you get into. So it's important to realize that it is a real thing, and it is really important to use your knowledge that you gain in law school.
I think one of the things one of the takeaways from law school that I had, or one of the lessons, I don't think I had a specific brilliant moment or a particular, I said it was a series of light bulbs to start with. I don't recall one being bigger than another. I think that the overall process kind of illuminated the importance of the collaboration that you learn. If you're willing, you may not realize this, but I like folks. I get along with folks pretty well, and I enjoyed a great deal the time that I spent with students. I mean, to me, young, old, male, female, just didn't make any difference. It didn't. I mean, I was interested in what they thought and what they said, and I loved it. I loved that part of it. I loved the collaboration. In church they call it fellowship, in other, brotherhood and sister, whatever. It's the group of people that you surround yourself with. And as a practicing attorney, I'm a member of the National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys. I don't know how you practice in my field without being a part of that. And the satisfaction you get from working with people who are dealing with the same problems that you are and helping the same people that you are, and you learn from each other and you share. And one of the first things, if you think of something really brilliant on your own, one of the hardest things in the world is to share that, because that's actually, that's money. That's the thing that you learned that you can use that no one else can. Here's the problem. If you don't share, they won't either, and they may have a whole lot smarter idea than your dinky little idea. And so you need to remember that collaborative process is huge, and it's easier if they're in different markets, so you're not after the same people. But even so, working with folks and collaborating and fellowshipping, that all to me was a tremendous thing, and I think law school really pulled that together for me, made me understand that better.
I think for me, the single best experience from law school that carried over after graduation is I worked for a professor who did a lot of research. And so I helped with that, and I became very familiar with how to research topics, how do you do footnotes, the components of writing a law review article. And she also served as a mentor. And she had an interest in the area of law that I ultimately ended up going into, and so she was able to guide me in that direction as well. And I think looking back, that really was an invaluable experience, because I still use in my practice today skills that I learned from her while I was in law school through that working experience.
Do you think, or do you feel that the curriculum here at Tech prepared you to pass the bar?
I will say that the core curriculum here is fantastic. You will hate it because you have to take income tax and classes like that, but it is, when you're super stressed out after your third year and you think you can't possibly learn everything that's in the huge stack of Barbary books that sit in front of you, it is invaluable. And to tie into some other questions we had, it also is a great way to experience a wide range of subjects that you may not have otherwise done if they hadn't made you. So I felt very comfortable with the curriculum for the bar.
I would agree. In 1993, we had a core curriculum. I had met some folks who went to school at UT through some competitions, and in discussing how they do things at UT and the way that we do things here, it became apparent to me that the primary focus here was you're going to pass the bar so that you can get out and go to work. That, in 1993 anyway, did not appear to be the primary focus of the UT Law School. And so in my conversations with my buddy about that, he was surprised at the number of classes that we were required to take here. But when you see that bar exam, you understand why you're required to take those classes here. And I made fun of him all the time about our bar passage rate being much higher than theirs, and maybe if they would take a few more required courses, they might catch up with us. So.
Yeah, and I'll just jump in there too. I mean, the bar exam, we have, for those of you who haven't like crazily studied our curriculum and stuff, we do have more required courses than other law schools. It takes more hours to graduate. We require 90. The minimum required by the ABA is something like 82 or 83. So there's a lot of law schools that are 83, 84 in that arena. Our required courses are courses that most students actually do end up taking anyway, because they're courses that you should take to be a competent, lawyer in anything. But really, at the end of the day, the bar exam is about your own individual effort. Like really, I mean, at law schools like to say they prepare you for the bar, but that's really not the way law schools in the United States are set up, even if they say they are. Because otherwise, if it was just that, Harvard, if it was just that and smarts, Harvard would have a 100% bar passage rate, and they don't, right? And some of the schools, not to name names, the anti-Harvard, whatever, the opposite of Harvard would have a 0% bar passage rate, and they don't either. Still, even at those schools, more than half pass the bar. And what we've found, we do a lot of things. We've got, who started a company, and you guys probably don't know this because it's fairly new, but in the last 2 or 3 years, we've hired a director of bar services. We've got a lot of extra sort of curricular bar prep things. Actually, I think this next weekend it's called Super Bar Weekend, so we invite a lecturer to come in and lecture on a specific area of the bar, or a topic like how to prepare for the essays, or how to approach studying for the multiple choice day and that kind of thing. So there are these little extra things that are not the classes, right? Because the classes are about teaching you how to think through and be a lawyer. And just like maybe the LSAT doesn't really have a bearing on what it's like to practice law, the bar, it's testing a whole bunch of stuff, that you may never see again after you leave the bar. And so when we've looked at, the people that don't pass, because we restudy this, we want to know, well, what can we fix? What's us? Professor Christopher, what she gets back from like the bar prep companies and stuff like that about there, because they want to make sure you all pass too, and they look into, well, why didn't people pass? They all say, yeah, we're not surprised at the people that didn't pass because they didn't do the work. Because nowadays they can track what online questions you've done, which videos you've watched, if you've turned in practice questions, and they say the ones that didn't pass did 10% of the videos, didn't turn in any practice questions, never got a practice essay scored, that kind of stuff. And that's like the one consistent factor with the people that don't pass for the most part, is that they just didn't put in the work. And so that's, I think we do a really good job. And I'm not going to lie to you and tell you like, oh yeah, you can't pass if you go somewhere else. But I think the reason our bar pass has been so good is because we have hardworking students that believe us when we say, just because you went to Tech doesn't mean you're going to pass the bar. You still need to, it's not just going to happen. You still have to put in the work outside of class when you get to that Crenshaw.
If you'll let me add to that, I agree with you 100%. It is the personal effort you put into it. And there's great programs all over the country. At the end of the day, you're the one who will sit down and take that test based on what you studied. I've mentioned before, my starting off with 3 kids and a mortgage and the wife, my options for not passing that bar were absolutely 100% zero. And so really the effort you put into it is, understand if you put enough into it, you'll pass it. You may not pass it the first time, but you'll pass it the second. Everybody that I knew, almost without exception, that did not pass the bar, they tried to start a job too soon. They spent a great deal of time fiddling around and doing something else. That was not my approach. I walked into law school with the approach, this is a job. This is a 9 to 5, 8 to 5 job, and more sometimes. So, I had a system. Whenever I took take Barbary, take advantage of, don't skip on any of that stuff. You're going to know more about law that day you take that test than you ever will again. So you go to the Barbary. I'd go to Barbary, get done at noon. I'd go home, have a sandwich, come back, and I'd sit right out here in this lobby. And for the next 6 or 7 hours, I'd make flashcards. Never did it during school, but studying for the bar, I made flashcards. I'd put a topic on the front, and if I didn't know everything I'd written about that topic on the back, well, then I had to go back over that card. But I made around 2,000 flashcards in the 2 weeks or 3 weeks right after Barbary. And then for the next week or so, I just spent going through and winnowing down that stack of cards, because if I could pick it up and tell what was on the other side without looking, then I could throw it away. And so after the first few times, that stack was about that tall, and then after that tall, and then finally that stuff that just would not stick went into a spiral notebook. And so I would look at those topics, hide it with my hand, look at those, till I finally got down to 2 or 3 things that probably ended up knowing, didn't even need to know, but those were the things I thought I needed to know that I just couldn't. But I had reduced my concern about the bar exam to a page in a notebook. It works differently for different people. The point is, I worked my keister off to make sure that just passing for me was not an option. We were out of money. I was out of time. I was already old. I couldn't wait any longer. We had to get this thing done.
Mel, I'd like to thank you for your comments so far. They've been very helpful. I have a question. People I talk to and people I know that have graduated law school, they talk about the stress of law school and how sometimes it gets to them. Or what are some things that you have done throughout your careers or throughout law school that have helped you to deal with the stress of law school and still succeed at a high level?
Besides alcohol, right? That's all I'm going to say.
I will say, especially your first year, it seems to be most stressful, that very first probably 6 weeks when you're trying to figure things out. I just remind you to, take a weekend. You're not going to learn law school your first weekend or your 1L year. People are going to probably try to convince you that you need to, but go to a football game, play golf, go hang out with your family if you have a family, do whatever it is that you do, and just remember that that's important. And, law school will take time, and you'll have to put in hard work and effort, but there is still time to do those things that make you whoever you are on the side also.
I think I should have figured out what Dwight apparently did, because I didn't when I was in law school. And so I graduated valedictorian, graduated from Baylor, summa cum laude, came to law school, and realized I actually had to apply myself. which was something I had not really had to do before. And I kind of had what Dwight was talking about. There are a lot of smart people in law school. And if that's your first experience with maybe not being one of the smart people in the room, sometimes that kind of hurts your ego. And that can be stressful for you to kind of put up with a change in the structure plus the topics that you're learning and realize that, you know, at the end of the day, you've got to put some effort into what you hope to get out of law school. And I didn't really learn that lesson very well my first year. I certainly had learned it by my second year. But I think if I had to look back on how to handle stress, I should have appreciated Dwight's comment a little bit more, that 80% is how hard are you willing to work to accomplish what you need to accomplish.
Well, like I said, I showed up here after being a coach, was scared to death. I tried to quit my first weekend. I was raised by my grandparents. After the first week, I called home and talked to my grandmother and said, look, if I quit now, I can still get a job coaching someplace. And she just kept saying, oh, you're fine, you're fine. And I got so frustrated. So you don't understand. These people are smart. I don't understand the language. I'm not going to make it. But what I found out was once I got into it and I got back to being me, which was I would go to the rec and I'd play basketball. I'd take a Saturday and go play golf. Because you've got to have a way to relieve the stress, because it is stressful. I mean, you all are successful people, otherwise you wouldn't be here. So now you have a much smaller pool that has been intensified, and so has the stress. But you have to remember how you got here, and don't throw all of that away. So if you watch television to relax, watch some television. If you go to the rec or if you play golf, continue to do that. Don't change everything that you do just because you're in a different environment. Do the things that have gotten you here, and remember that you need to kind of take a break and give yourself a chance to recharge. That's what I would want to remind each of you.
And remember that question and ask it again tomorrow when we have the student panel too, because that's a really good question. Everybody deals with it differently, but it's really important. I mean, that's one of the top, when you do the surveys of law students and things, the concerns and the things that contribute to people that don't perform as well as they should. Stress is usually one of the big things. Where was that hand? Just came up here.
Hi. Would you tell me about the most enjoyable day you've had as an attorney? What was it like from the morning to the evening? What made it the best day being an attorney?
Well, I'll tell you my most enjoyable day. I represented a young man over in Tulia, Texas, who got wrongfully convicted. Some of you may be aware of those cases in Tulia. I had one of the last defendants. We went to trial. I left that place in tears. It still bothers me to this day because I believe in our judicial system, and that was just a huge miscarriage of justice. I left that place crying when they convicted my client and sentenced him to 60 years in prison. The happiest day was when the governor signed a pardon for that young man, and they all had to admit that they had lied and cheated our judicial system.
There is a day that sticks in my mind as part of the day, so I'm not sure from morning to evening quite, but I'm sure that it colored every bit of it. I do a lot of Medicaid work, and a lot of times the people who come to me it's a spouse that's in nursing home and they're out of money, they need Medicaid or something like that. They're in extremely stressful conditions. They don't know where the money's going to come from. They don't understand all this stuff. And I remember one little lady that came in. She was trying to deal with her husband being put into a nursing home, and she was a little grandma lady. She had, the frizzy gray hair, and she was pulling out tufts of it. because she was so stressed. She hadn't bathed in several days. She wore no makeup. She was in dirty warm-ups. She was absolutely out of her mind. And I went to visit her husband in the nursing home, and then I went through and did what I do, and then I came back and told her, I said, I thought, I think it'll be all right. You need to go home, try to take a break. And she left, and we ended up getting him on Medicaid. The next time I saw this was several weeks later, next time I saw the little lady, her hair was done, her makeup was done, her little voice was just as strong as it could possibly be. She had on this little denim jacket. She used to sell stuff on Craigslist. She'd put beads and stuff all over these jackets and do those little decorations on purses and things. The cutest little grandma you would ever want to run across in your life, and was the happiest, relaxed. She had a future. She could see how it was all going to work. Her husband was taken care of, and life was good. Well, I tell you what, like I said, that's a rush, and you're going to do whatever you can to get that back, because that's pretty good. So I remember that particularly because it just made such a huge difference in her life. Just the fact that I knew what they needed to do and was able to click it and flip that switch, and it worked. That's a good day.
I have the least amount of practice of my peers up here, but you have good days and you win motions, and that's great, and you're excited and you're super. But I have a 1-year-old. No day, no matter what happens at the office, is better than any day I get to come home and play with that kid. So I think just keep things in perspective in law school. It's hard sometimes. It's stressful. You'll do great things. You all will in various aspects of life. But remember what is really important. Also.
Yeah, that's actually the next trend. So you've seen puppies coming over for stress release for finals. We're going to start bringing babies in. And then you can check them out from the library and bring them back,
I had a client who had cerebral palsy, and before she came to me for representation, she had spent probably the last 5 years in a group home under a guardianship, and it was a commercial guardian that had guardianship over her. And she really didn't need a guardian. She did not have an intellectual disability in the sense that she was fully capable, fully competent, but she had communication difficulties as a result of her medical condition. And her guardian had really become very oppressive. She wanted to date, she wanted to have a boyfriend, she actually had this guy that she was interested in, she wanted to live on her own, she felt like she could do that, her care providers felt like that she could do that, but her guardian prohibited her from doing that, really took away her sense of self, because she felt like she was unable to make decisions she was more than capable of making. And at that time, I was working for Disability Rights of Texas. We filed a restoration of competency. The commercial guardian did not see fit to even show up for the hearing, which was kind of in line with what they had done all along. And the judge ruled that her competency was restored, her guardianship was terminated, she was able to live on her own, to make decisions just like you and I would be able to make. And she let out the loudest squeal that I have ever heard in the courtroom hall. The judge actually came out because he thought something was wrong. She was so excited. There was just such a look of joy on her face. And I felt so great that day about being an attorney, to give something to someone that we sort of all take for granted. And she was as delighted as could be, and as far as I know, is still living on her own. She got married, is very self-sufficient.
Is that not cool or what? Right? I mean, that's pretty cool. I mean, and I think that's a good example of, right now it's really popular to bash lawyers in law school, and I'm sure some of you have probably had people say when they find out that you're going to law school, what? Why do you want to do that? Right? You're just going to help corporations take money from all this kind of stuff, and there's too many lawyers and this, that, and the other. And I think anybody who's practiced law or done especially nonprofit work and that kind of stuff knows there's a lot of people that need help that don't have lawyers. If you're a big corporation, there's a lot of people that want to represent you, you're fine. There's no legal aid for Fortune 500 companies, I don't think. But as a lawyer, you just have a capacity to help people that is sort of unmatched by most professions. And I think you probably know this, whenever you're a lawyer and you're in the room, if everybody wants you to have a lawyer on your board, on your church board, in your little league, People will come to you for things. And Lee was right. People believe you when you say stuff. Because, well, not me for some reason. I went to law school and I'm bald, but people don't believe me when I say things. But still, like you have a knowledge base and a skill set that can effectuate some real change and positivity in the world if you choose to use it that way. And so don't let anybody tell you that you're sort of picking the wrong career, because it's a really good one. And I think that sentiment's a really good thing to end on, because it's right at 2:30. So please join me in thanking the panel.